is sponsored by the Feet Lady, Anaya Tony.
Hey, David, what you know boy? How you looking spritey so? Just the other day you complaining to me about back pain, chest pain, your foot swell up, circulation, all kind of thing. What you take for that boy?
Jamal boy, I went by the Feet Lady, and not just me, I carry the family too. Boy, the family I history with arthritis, kidney problem, diabetes, circulation, acid reflux. You call all of them just now. I had a pinch nerve too, and a cousin with lupus. And boy, the Feet Lady help you with all of that. And Naya Tony boy, she's no joke. She even helping you if you had a stroke. Call she today boy, don't make joke.
Call Naya Tony, the Feet Lady of Reflexology, today at 478-7416.
Back on track with you. You're listening to Men Talk on Isaac the Promise, and we are opening up the lines to take your calls. We had several calls. Because of the fact that we have had so many WhatsApp between last week and this week, I can't really go back to the text messages, the questions that we had last week. I'll still try and see if I can locate some of them. But let me perhaps start it off by asking the question, Christian people are not immune to this, as we can see. We're not immune. And I'm trying to understand why is it that there seems to be no distinction between saved and unsaved when it comes to pornography. As a matter of fact, we learned sometime the other day that Trinidad is the number one in terms of accessing porn sites, number one nation per capita in terms of accessing porn sites. And I am sure those are not just non-Christian people or unsaved people or non-believers. A lot of them have to do with believers. And is it that this thing is such a struggle that it is challenging for even those who name the name of Christ, those who perhaps stand up on a pulpit, whether you're preaching or you're singing or you're whatever? These are some of the same people that are addicted to porn. Is it that it is such a pull that it's not even being resisted by those of us who call ourselves by the name of Christ, Bishop?
All right. Well, let's just step back. I just need to suggest that the citing of Trinidad and Tobago being the leading, that's a little dated, right, Prof? A little dated. That's some years now. They have just reconfigured that number, and of course, Trinidad is not as prominent in the listing anymore.
Well, that's the information we got a couple of weeks ago,
right.
And we were told that the figures were from, I think it's May this year or something like that. So I'm not sure. I'm just giving you second-hand information. Yes.
Right. Okay. Great. And in response to your question, it is not as a straight answer as we would like as to the exposure. Let me go down maybe 3 or 4 alleys. I want to draw on 2 quotes, one from Terry Ware and the other from Stewart, to identify one aspect of the challenge. Now, Terry Ware says, the most widespread and troublesome issues facing the church today are sexual in nature. Yet, these are the topics least discussed from the pulpit and least understood by most Christians. So part of the challenge we are experiencing, is the deafening silence from the pulpit and from pastors, and then the ignorance on the matter of sexuality. So that there is this assumption. Now, if you grew up, let's say, a non-Christian, and you get saved in your adult life, and you've been exposed to sexual way of being, you would have come in with some history and some knowledge. Mm-hmm. But if you grew up in church and where there is this deafening silence, then of course the ignorance about sex and sexuality, you have to encounter that challenge. And so I have worked with a lot of young people and ministers, gospel artists, and so on, whose exposure to porn really, some of them stumble upon it, some of them they're traveling abroad, and they're all there in the hotel alone, and they are bored or curious. Some of them, after great ministry, there is this deep emotional vacuum where there is need for intimacy and connection. And so that's one of the reality: ignorance and silence. Here's the second point by Stuart. Stuart says, it is ironic that a religion which is grounded in what Weber calls incarnational consciousness should have so much trouble with bodies. What he's saying is that we have created a disconnect, because at the heart of the Christian message is the incarnation. And the concept of the incarnational consciousness is you cannot speak Christianity without speaking about the human body. And on account of that, he's saying, how is it? It is so ironic that we have an incarnational a religion which pulls the body in, but yet we struggle. And so over the years, I have looked at what has confused us, because even the church fathers, if I should go down that alley, when you read, let's say, Songs of Solomon, and I know my friend Huey have done a good piece of work on Songs of Solomon. When you look at Songs of Solomon, the church fathers struggle with admitting that book into the biblical canon because some felt it was too sensual. And so that is another challenge here we have with the incarnational message and consciousness and religion, that we stay away from the body because it might be too sensual. Right now I'm working on, I'm tidying up a webinar that we're going to have, single, save and sensual or sexual. We put that together. But the point being, so when it comes to Christians now, what we have found is that because of this strong prohibition, whenever you see legalism present, wherever there is denial of all human sexuality, stolen waters are sweet, says the proverb. Mm-hmm. And so when a guy or a woman get a chance to steal a peep, boy, that is as explosive as you can get it. So we are denying. I was reading a report some years ago, in the US that is, where a certain state, they had a Christian convention, and the hotel in the area reported a higher use of porn viewing by the occupants in the hotel during the convention period. And so some Christians are really of the view that if they go under the anonymity, then of course they are free now to explore their own sex and sexuality in that way. And so what we have here is a deep-seated need, I say, for intimacy, a deep-seated need for information, and a deep-seated need to be real with ourselves and our sexuality, as we're against denying it, hiding, concealing, which actually heightens the secrecy of the thing. And I'll tell you this, if I could wrap up this point, there are a lot of Christians, they are actually suffering in silence. They are battling, but and the silence actually and the secrecy keeps them trapped in the web of pornography. See? A long answer, Prof, to a short question.
Thank you for the long answer. Anyway, folks, 622-1981 and 628-1981, those are the numbers to call if you have a question on pornography. And of course, ladies, you can WhatsApp us at 275-1981. Send a text message, please, ladies, not a voice note. I would want to invite, my co-host and George to jump in at any time, question or comment at this time while we wait on a call. And let me just say before any one of them respond, again, folks, I know this is kind of taboo, but even as, Don Bishop Hamilton said, that maybe we don't talk about it enough in our churches. It's kind of taboo. We don't talk about it, and hence the reason why it probably overcomes us, because we would not have spoken about it, we would not have discussed it, we would not have emptied ourselves so that we could be filled again. And that's why we have this forum today, for you to ask your questions. For you may want to disguise your voice if you don't want us to hear you, but there's no need to do that act really, But if that's the only way, then call and ask a question. Now, men, you can also access the WhatsApp. You can send us a text message as well. If you don't want to call in, you can also send us a text message to 275-1981. Gentlemen, yes?
But Prof, I need to add something that I forgot there, based on what you said a while ago. Now, I have been, every pastor, minister have their area of focus and ministry. I'm in the area of counseling, and so it's off the public radar. And I have been doing a lot of work in the area of sex and sexuality and so on. But here's the interesting thing. If a pastor begins preaching on tithing, somebody reads into that he has some kind of ulterior motive.
He wants money.
All right? So one day I was doing a session on sex and sexuality, and a lady put up a question. She says, Pastor Milton, with all due respect, almost anywhere I go, you talk about marriage and sex and sexuality. With all due respect, I know when somebody professes their question with all due respect, you kind of just say, right, where is this going? So she said to me, in a class session, she says, are you struggling with any issue? Wow. That's why you're talking about this over and over like that.
Oh my goodness.
I see.
Yeah.
So there is
that's the point there.
Yes, there is an apprehension by some people. There is an apprehension by some people. You see, if I keep talking about this, maybe I'm trying to work my own issues out. and that's the point.
And I guess too, people are thinking if I ask a question about it, people might think I have issues with it, so let me not ask any questions.
Well, the traditional teenage way to do is, I have a friend.
I have a friend, asking for a friend. So come on, call. You can call and ask for a friend, people. 622-1981, 628-1981. Yes, Huey.
No, I just wanted to add to that is one of the challenges. That's why we have such a great challenge. Is how easily we facilitate condemnation of each other. And so when you have statements like that, and it really speaks to and even as Bishop Dunn shared at the beginning, and would have shared it last week, I wasn't here, really getting to the mechanics of it. Because a lot of unfortunately, a lot of persons just see that people nasty. People they're quick to judge, quick to condemn, and people observe. So here it is. We have this problem plaguing the church community, and there are those who really want to get help. There are those who really want to be open, but then you have persons making statements like that. And it really goes to show, our lack of understanding. Not just persons who are struggling with the issue of pornography and other sexual issues, but persons who may not, who basically tend to have a very short-sighted and even at times at worst, a very condemning, view towards it, which again now puts us deeper into this vicious, I wouldn't say cycle, a pit. And one of the strengths of it is secrecy. One of the strengths of it is fear and shame, right? So to Bishop Dunn's point there, we really need to have, he mentioned he's looking at a webinar on it. But I think, Bishop, even the whole aspect of being able to equip leaders and how to facilitate healing, how to facilitate these conversations, even those who do not have the problem. Because one thing I tell people is, you don't have a problem in this area, but think about the area that you do have a problem in. How that always recurring for you, and how you're always going to go. So I think a lot of us, as persons who don't have this problem, we come to others in the strength of not having it. For example, cigarette smoke, smoking cigarettes, that may not be a temptation for me, right? I'm not sweating cold bullets, right, when I see somebody take a puff. So that empathy, that grace, that sensitivity is lacking, because I think a lot of us are ignorant, not only those who may be struggling with it, but also those who may not be struggling with it.
Yeah. And I think Huey, what you have mentioned there really opens up another dimension of the work. As a counselor, one of the things that we are told in our training is that yourself is the greatest therapeutic tool, not your theories, but yourself. So what happens is that if I am to be creating a safe environment, and I am not struggling per se with porn, but I could be struggling with my sexuality, you see? And so when you walk into that space, I feel so uncomfortable. For many years, I do the avoidance dance. So when you come to me now, I really don't know how to manage or handle what you are saying. A second dimension of this is that the matter is such a high kept secret. I'm going to roll out a heavy one here. So sometimes you approach someone hoping that that's a safe place, but that person is struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
I read an article in the Leadership magazine some years ago, where because of a certain person's sexual addiction, they acted out a lot and they contracted an STD, and it was a religious leader. And so they would drive across state to get their medication to remain anonymous.
Wow.
So one time they drove across state and they decided to go to chat with a senior Christian mentor to see if they could help. And he said the mentor pull his drawer in the office and show him his dose of the medication that he's also taking. So that wounded healers are people who understand they have to come in the spirit of Galatians 6, where it says, if a brother is overtaken in a fault, you who are spiritual, you do so in the spirit of humility, considering your own self. So if I come high and mighty, and I have shared on national radio and all already, when I was studied abroad, I got exposed to pornography for the first time as an adult male, Christian male. And I know I was trapped for a full month. So I understand. I saw how it did damage to my marriage. It did damage to my own pastoral care of people. It did damage in my own view of women, the whole objectification. And I had to make a decision that after this month, if this thing is not arrested, I will be destroyed. Now here is the challenge. Who do I go to? How do I come out? Here it is, I'm a pastor. Oh my goodness, how would they look at me? And see, and to come out, I had to call a trusted friend, and I entered into an accountability relationship. See, and that is key. Becoming accountable. Now, interesting enough, how did I stumble upon this? Our church, where we were studying in Jamaica, our church had an all-night prayer meeting. But I had a workshop the following morning, which was a Saturday. So I left the prayer meeting about 2 o'clock in the morning, that Friday. I left it. And I'm reviewing my notes, appearing, put on my television for distraction, comfort. And for the first time, hardcore porn was beaming on my television. Now, I didn't have cable. I didn't have, because that's a luxury for students. But what I discovered is that my neighbor's dish was beaming bright and clear, 2 o'clock in the morning on my television set. I never forgot the channel 22. It's good in my mind. So here it is now. I'm preparing my notes. I have a remote in my hand, and a mind saying, take it off. One saying, leave it on. Because your body begins to respond because of the visual stimulation. And somewhere along the road, I can't even tell you how long I stayed there, because time just seemed to vanish away when you're consuming this stuff. I thought I heard my wife getting up to use the washroom, and I switched it to cartoon very quick.
Of course.
What a preacher watching Tom and Jerry 3 o'clock in the morning. Come on. And when the coast was clear, I switched it back. So, but here's the thing. The following Friday, I was up at 3 o'clock, and I convinced myself I got up to pray and study. But in the back of my mind, as we would say, I know I was up.
Tom and Jerry.
Planting. And then you have rationalization that start taking place. But maybe it would help you stimulate your sex life as a married person. Maybe you'll learn some techniques. But I am an adult, and this is adult education, and this adult entertainment, and you go through all the things. And as a recurring decimal, every Friday I was up, trying to convince and justify, until it came to a point where I says, I wonder if I could go and get Cable Boy. So now trying to convince my wife, and she's saying, but we don't need cable. We don't need to have that expenditure. We are students. And see me now using all my male prowess now to try to convince how cable could be educational for the children and valuable for, guess what? So there's a lot of hidden stuff that happens. I remember to my shame, I went as far as calling the cable station and trying to disguise my voice to inquire. So you must pick up a Trini voice in Jamaica. Trying to disguise my voice to inquire how I could get channel 22 and what it would cost and so on. The point I am making is that I try to be as practical and real. I'm not some armchair theologian. But once you got back to church, your mind start undressing people. Stay what you want. Another effect is that you start objectifying your spouse, because in your mind, your spouse now is an object of your lust, an object of what you saw, and you have to try to now subtly try to introduce the ideas without letting your spouse know where it's coming from. So what actually happened, a phantom came into the bedroom. The electronic woman, not woman, woman came into the bedroom. And so it was adultery, you see. So those who say it's all harmful, harmless, and doesn't bother anybody, no. You literally contaminate your marital life, and you try to rationalize by saying, well, it will help you with some sex techniques and all that kind of a stuff. Now, there's the problem now of surfing the net. Now I know where I'm going. I'm going to channel 22. But I tried surfing the net, so I went to 23, 24, 30, 50, but I know where I'm going. It's circling, and it's coming down, and it's coming down. So it pulls you in until that's locked inside there, and it damage. So I had to call a friend. I'm just giving my testimony here. I have to call a friend, and I said, listen, I didn't go looking for this thing, but it found me. So you don't have to go looking for it. It could find you. And I need help. So here was the accountability arrangement. And you need these trusted, committed people. He says, what time the channel comes on? I say, about 3 o'clock. So he said, I'm going to call you at 3. I'm going to call you at 3:30 on every half an hour until 4 or 5 when the channel is off. He called me. Sometimes I'm angry. What are you calling me for? And the accountability relationship is that once he calls me, I have to speak the truth. Don, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
Is the television on? And sometimes I see the phone ringing and I'm ignoring it. I don't want to answer. I don't want to answer because I have to speak the truth. And so if you're really serious, you cannot do it alone. You have to get into trusted accountability groups. Because James says, confess your sins one to another. Pray one for another to be healed. And that's the kind of accountability we're talking about. So it's not until I was able to come out and then look back and I says, my God, thank you, friend, for being such a trusted person in bringing me out.
Indeed. 40 minutes after 7 o'clock, you're listening to Men Talk on Isaac 98 FM. We are speaking with Pastor Don Hamilton concerning pornography. As you know, he's been here before and we have been dealing with the topic before. And we want to give you the opportunity today to ask your questions because indeed, last week when we ended up, we had a number of questions that we could not answer because we ran out of time. I don't know if these people got their questions answered or they're not willing to ask them again. But please give us a call, 622-1981, 628-1981, and of course, 275-1981. We'll be back in a minute.
Praise the Lord, my brothers. This is Minister Phil Tarver, and you're listening to the Men Talk program with the professor on Isaac 98.1, The Promise.
Back on track with you. We have just about 15 minutes to go. I have a question here.
Yeah.
And it says, why is porn wrong? I heard it's a tutorial. What's wrong with learning sex via porn when the church don't discuss it? The only thing the church says is have no sex and the marriage bed is not defiled. How else can I know how to perform such actions in marriage? That's the question.
Well, the question is putting two things together. Is the silence of the church on speaking on sex and sexuality. But the way the question is framed, it almost says, because this is absent here, it gives permission and legitimacy over there. And that line of reasoning doesn't really fall through properly, and we'll expose what we're saying. Now, to correct an abuse, I'm just using a frame here. To correct an abuse, you don't correct it by another abuse. You don't correct it by another abuse. The point we're making is that if you are correcting an abuse, or if you are correcting a wrong, you want to correct it with a right, not another wrong. Because what will happen is that you are saying the ends justify, because here's what, the church is not doing this, and therefore. That line of reasoning for me gets me very, very nervous, because you may have cases where, let's say you're a married person and your partner is not being sexual with you. You can then say, well, because they're not being sexual, I can go outside. You see? And it justifies that. So in correcting, I'm glad we're having this conversation. What we are challenging our leaders to do is to raise the bar and educate our people on sex and sexuality, because we need to address that gap. But there's something more than that. Because we have knowledge of sex and sexuality, my theology says right knowledge doesn't necessarily mean there'll be right conduct, because we, at the core, we love the forbidden. We love what is hidden. We love to explore. And so I could teach how much I want on sex and sexuality. If a man or woman wants to pursue porn, they will anyhow. Now let me flip the question to the other side. The other side is that we are now trying to take the pornography and baptize it and give it a nice name, sex education. The fact about it, when you go through the Bible, whenever the word porneia is used, it's always referring to illicit sexual behavior. Not just sex before marriage. It's always in the negative. So we don't put what God has called off limit and baptize it and rename it as sex education. That is a subtle claim I see happening all over the world on sex and sexuality. They are taking all kinds of deviation, all kinds of, and reframing it and renaming it and legalizing it in all kind of a fashion. But that doesn't
power language.
Make it, yes. And they're being politically correct. That doesn't mean that it makes it right. Now, the other part of it, I think I have come to accept that pornography is an insult to the image and likeness of God in man. What do I mean by that? God has made us creative beings, and we have used our creativity for all kinds of purposes except the bedroom. So the creature, man, is a creative being. So husbands and wives, we ought to think in terms of how do we make our intimacy space a very creative, exciting thing. Now, let's say you are not married. Let's say you're not married. God has established boundaries. Now, boundaries here is not unique to Christianity. A boundary here is to tell you your limit. If you're going over North Coast and you don't see a railing, we will say, but the government too irresponsible. They need to put a railing that people will fall off. A railing is a boundary. A railing. Traffic lights, although we colorblind in Trinidad. Traffic lights give you red, but that is also a boundary. When you're going to shop and there's a counter separating you from the vendor, that is a boundary. So oftentimes we take this word boundary in a very prohibitive way. Boundaries are necessary because unlimited freedom means bondage to all. So we need boundaries. So what God has done, He's not a killjoy God that says, you are not a sexual being. That's denial. We are sexual beings, but what we need to do is to understand how we manage our bodies within the context of a high sex world and within the context of our own biochemicals. The church has not followed the leg. I'll give you two examples of that. One mother came to me some years ago. She says, a demon of sex is attacking a young boy, and the boy is in puberty and he's having nocturnal emissions. And obviously she says a demon that is causing them nocturnal emission because, and I had to stop mama. You see? I'll give you another example. One gentleman invited us to a prayer meeting at home, and he says a demon of heat is attacking his 45-year-old wife. And he says, this demon so strange, it have us sweating, and how come he not experiencing it? I say, because you're a man.
Exactly.
So what we have done, like bad research, we have a theory, and all the data must fit into that theory. And so our theory really is we are spiritual beings, and once you get the spiritual right, everything like domino effect will fall into line. That is bad theory. So part of our work there is helping our people appreciate their bodies, celebrating their bodies, understanding how their bodies operate. And I think if we do so, for example, a simple statement when God says to men, flee youthful lust. That means run. He never says stand up and speak in tongues. He never says to pull out a theology book. No, because there's a point of no return as someone rightfully said, this is men talk, right? And erect penis have no conscience. So
Yep.
if I understand my body, there's a point of no return. So I have to know, if I apply Corinthians 10 that says, God is faithful and He'll make a way of escape, I have to capture that window of escape before matters go on a slippery slope, because we are tempted in all points. In all points. So every human being, as the Jamaican Clinton Chisholm says, when a man says he's not experiencing sexual temptation, he either lied, he's too old, or he's sick. So it's a reality. Prof, let me give you an experience. Some years ago that I had. One lady came into my office some years ago, church office. One pretty East Indian lady. Woy. Now, once somebody hear me say a pretty woman, they assume that's lust. You see? So we don't even know how to affirm beauty and attractiveness. So the woman is pretty. So, but she's hemming and hawing in the session, and I'm trying to get to why she came and what was her objective. And she says, Pastor, what happened? I'm having some dreams. And I say, okay, all right. I say, but I am not a Joseph. I don't have the gift of interpreting dreams. You know, but she said, you know, the dream is about both of us. I said, okay, all right. She says, Pastor, there's this recurring dream of both of us having sex. Now, I didn't go and look for that dream. It came to me. So I'm saying nobody's exempted. And when I tell you the woman looked good and attractive, and here it is, of all the things she rolled out, is a dream. I like a book called Sex in the Forbidden Zone by Dr. Peter Rutter. And Peter Rutter says, he's speaking about professionals keeping their boundary lines. Sex in the Forbidden Zone by Peter Rutter. And he says one night a client came like that. And he says his animal instinct, his darker side, his opportunistic side, say, you know, play into this. And I know of preachers and Christians, if they only hear a sexy woman coming to them talking about they're having dreams, why? You're making that part of the ministry.
Of course.
And convince the person. But here's the interesting thing. I put the question, and I'm making a point. We are all exposed to sexuality, whether it's on television, whether it's on internet, and we have to have the same sense of boundaries. So I asked her, okay, you're having sex, you're having dream, but both of us having sex. I say, that is not with my consent. That is in your head. That's in your dream. So what do you want me to do about that? Why are you telling me that? She unzipped her bag and took out a bottle of oil and said she wanted me to anoint her with this oil so the dreams would stop. That is a setup. That's a setup. What? So I don't have oil in the church office? And what would save you if you take that lady's oil and anoint her and touch her? Once you touch somebody, you have violated already the space. So I'm so glad she came the day that we had the intercessors
and they prayed for
praying. So I called 3 mamas in Israel into the room immediately. And I turned them loose in prayer. When that lady started to bawl, never see her since. What am I saying? There's always a way of escape, even with pornography. And if we're going to take the word serious, we have to say, okay, God, what is your way of escape? Because this, what we're experiencing, you see, some people make a thing, boy, the devil after me, every night is porn, I can't study, I can't think. That is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above you are able. But you make a way of escape that you're able to bear it. So I have approached the thing as saying, how do I find the way? What is the way of escape? And that is the way we're trying to bring people out. Okay?
Indeed. And well, we are out of time now. One of the final questions we have is, what are some of the practical ways one can break the cycle? But I think you just talked about it, that you have to find your way of escape. There is a way. Yeah, there is a way, and you need to find it.
Because God said He'll make a way.
Right. I mean, and you mentioned one of the ways in that, finding somebody to be accountable to, deal with it, and that's one. But I think most of the times we know the way, but we just don't want to take that way of escape. God provides a way. He said it. He said it's going to be a way of escape. But sometimes we kind of, prefer to say, well, there's no way out of this thing. And so I think we ourselves sometimes are to blame for what we find ourselves in. I wish we had more time to discuss it, but we're out of time. So let me say thank you so much. But before that, I want to ask Huey and even George, maybe George too, if you want to, any final words. I know Bishop said a lot today, and we needed to hear all these things. But I want to give you all a chance to say something before we close off. George?
Well, the one thing that I would say is that in knowing yourself, you will be able to know how to win the battle. You will be able to know how to fight the enemy. So take that step. Those of us who are listening, who are under the sound of my voice, who are battling this force, this foe, take that step and get to know and understand yourself and reach out for help and assistance. It's the only way that you can win this battle, that you can win this war, through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Love you, Trinidad and Tobago. Have a wonderful evening.
Huey?
Yeah, I think to the question I was asked by a caller earlier, coming out of that, I think key to it is really to recognize that it is an issue, it is a problem. That is one of the challenges we have. So we have the ignorance, but then we have those who seek to justify it. And therefore, we really need to recognize that. Let's start with the fact that it is something that doesn't glorify God, as even as Don would have mentioned, it is something that is insulting to even our creativity, our ability to have, to enjoy sexual intimacy in the context of marriage. So I think, we really have to start looking at who are we being discipled by. And of late, over the years, sadly, Netflix and others we have allowed them to disciple us, the way the world operates, and we have a different kingdom. So let it start with that, knowing who you are, and then we could take it from there in terms of the practical things, and then in terms of other things like accountability. But once you believe that it's okay, what's the big deal? We'll have problems.
Yeah, indeed. Bishop, I'll give you the last word tonight.
Well, thank you once again. My last word, is this. Deliverance is also a process, not always an event. And part of the problem we have seen is that some people, they experience deliverance, but they see deliverance as an event and not a process. So that if you go to a prayer meeting, I'm not knocking deliverance ministry, you go to a prayer meeting and you feel you were delivered from porn and delivered from this. The next thing that needs now is deliverance as a maintenance reality. Because devils come back, and if they see your house clean, they are going to bring reinforcement. And so experience deliverance as a maintenance process, not just an event.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Bishop Don Hamilton, Huey Cuffie, and George Thomas. Gentlemen, thank you so much. God bless you. And
my pleasure.
Bless you as well.
Yeah,
folks, thanks for coming, Bishop.
Yes, this brings us to the end of Men Talk for today. Thank you so much for allowing us to be in your company, and we'll do it again next week at the same time, 6:30 p.m. until 7:30. That's it for us for now. Stay tuned, and remember, Men Talk was brought to you by Anais Reflexology Health and Wellness Clinic.
Hey, David, what you now, boy? How you looking sprightly so? Just the other day you complaining to me about back pain, chest pain, your foot swell up, circulation, all kind of thing. What you take for that, boy?
Jamal boy, I went by the feet lady, and not just me, I carry the family too. Boy, the family I history with arthritis, kidney problem, diabetes, circulation, acid reflux. You call all of them just now. I had a pinched nerve too, and a cousin with lupus. And boy, the feet lady help you with all of that. And Naya Tony boy, she's no joke. She even helping you if you had a stroke. Call she today, boy. Don't make joke.
Call Anaya Tony, the feet lady of reflexology, today at 478-7416.
Isaac